beneath the surface of our ocean.
I don't know about the beneath the surface of the ocean here. I think we're beneath the surface of an aurora.
That's right. That's right. Well, you could technically see an aurora borealis, from below the water, technically. May not look as nice, but
Oh, okay. I mean, it's not the same as seeing it up front and in person.
that's right. I agree. I agree.
Awesome. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. We're calling this Speed Edition only because Al and I are quite literally speeding to the airport, but we thought, before we jump on the planes and then we forget, let's do a quick podcast and everything. Lots happened in literally the last week. I would probably offer Al the proverbial what could possibly go wrong and wrong.
We'll find out. We're in the air quite a bit the next few weeks. Speaking of which, traveling, Josh will be at DEF CON this week. So if you're able to link up with him, awesome. I'll actually be down in Dallas at the Data Center Investment and Construction Experience Conference or Expo Conference. Um, Down at the Fairmont in Dallas. So if you're attending that, love to meet up with you, say hi, get a picture. And then next week I'm in Austin for excuse me, not the week after. So in 2 weeks I'm in Austin for a defense conference, and then also a AI conference. So if you're in the Austin area in 2 weeks, give me a shout. I would love to see you, um, and just talk. And I guess is this a good time to talk about podcast guests?
Well, I'm going to be there just hanging out with friends, not really attending the conference. That's usually my, uh, you know, go to a pub nearby, grab a beer with some friends, or a drink, or some food, or quick bites. That's just usually how I do it. But I'm excited for DEF CON because I got a bunch of my social engineering capture the flag Temple University competitors. They won the high school bracket this past year. And so they got an invitation to compete in the big one at the DEF CON. So
There you go.
definitely be very, very, very much present to support and cheer them on. It's going to be super exciting to see how a bunch of high schoolers fare against the adults, or vice versa. You know how the adults fare against a bunch of high schoolers. Let's just see what.
I think that's probably the more accurate you know scenario there. I think the high schoolers are gonna give them a run for their money.
Yeah.
Um, but it's all good, man. But either way, we're on the road a lot as is, and then I think the next few weeks we're on the road quite a bit as well. But we'd love to engage with you and talk with you, get your perspective on things. It's always great. Um, so that
Oh,
being said,
before I forget, by the way, welcome everyone to the podcast. If you guys are first timers, Al and I each week try to get to talk about something security related, risk management, public safety, cybersecurity, physical security, operational security. And, we share our thoughts. Nothing, salesy. This the whole point is a learning expedition for everyone here. So first timers, welcome. Give a shout if you are first time. And yeah, we have a fun episode this week, only because we're talking security incidents or just incidents in general and responding to them. I think, needless to say, there were quite a few incidents this past week
yeah. So
that invoked some very, very, very interesting responses. One including our firm, because we were deep in the throes of it. I think most of us were deep in the throes. It's just, to what degree in the last week. Al, where do you want to start off with this week?
well, why don't we kick it off with some natural disasters, and then we'll go from there. So, I mean, I think everyone saw last week tsunami in well, potential tsunami in the Hawaiian Islands due to an earthquake. I believe it was in off of Russia, an 8.8 earthquake, if my facts are correct. Um, and so obviously tsunamis very, 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 very deadly and dangerous to island nations and islands in general, right? But then time of the year as well. Like, we're in peak travel season right now, especially Hawaiian Islands. So, um, could have been really nasty to the Hawaiian Islands. I know there was a lot of evacuations that were posted in Oahu and Kauai. Um, Thankfully, it looks like that tsunami kind of fizzled out, which is great. But I think from a big picture perspective, all my friends in emergency management in the Hawaiian Islands and in the Pacific were freaking out last week quite a bit because we just weren't really sure what was going to happen. If you guys were watching the news, I mean, we did see the water retract, which is big sign of like big wave coming. That typically happens. The water retracts from the shoreline back into the ocean, which means the wave energy, like that's a big indicator that the wave energy is so big it's actually sucking in the water, and then it's going to push it back out at a very high velocity. But it looks like I mean, there was some flooding that I saw, a little bit of flooding in some of the lower low lying areas, but no real major damage. So I would call that a win. Call that a win for everybody.
I think we got lucky in there in the context. I think it was also low tide, if I remember correctly. Or
Yeah,
very
it
low
was
tide.
low tide.
So the amount of damage was probably no greater with the amount of energy than going to an unexpected high tide event, basically. So
Right.
that
Right.
was pretty lucky in that sense. And it wasn't just the Hawaiian Islands. The tsunami impacted the entire Pacific Rim. So you saw Japan, um, its proximity to where the earthquake was went into high defense very, very, very quickly. And combined also with all the other places just around Alaska went pretty early too as well. I think the biggest we saw here in the U.S. was a famous city, Crescent City, hitting 4 feet waves, basically.
For all
Um,
my surfer buddies, we're just ecstatic because I'm a surfer, so you start anything above 2 feet along like the Oregon, Northern California coast, you get real excited. Especially in summertime. Wintertime, you get bigger waves, but summertime, you're just, oh yeah, this is it. This is so I'm sure there are plenty of guys up there in Crescent City trying to catch waves. Rocky
which
Coast, Rocky Coast.
which is our PSA here saying don't do something like
Yeah,
that. It's highly
yeah.
discouraged because you
Do
never
at your own risk.
you never know how big a tsunami is going to be. Like it could be 1 feet, or in the case,
18 feet.
yeah, in the case of what was it? Was it Sendai? I think it was way higher on that one. It exceeded even all their traditional
Yeah.
tsunami defenses.
Even like Katrina, and it wasn't a tsunami per se, it was a surge wave from a hurricane, but um I think the seawall had been built for 14 feet and this thing went like 16, 17 feet, right? So you cannot Mother Nature is the X factor. You just never know what Mother Nature is going to do. And I'm not advocating anyone to go out surfing during a hurricane or during a tsunami. I know guys do it. I know a lot of guys who have done that. Definitely not advocating that, but um, I will say that go at your own risk because the waves may look cool initially, but then there's underwater currents which you can't gauge, and you caught that great wave, and now you're getting sucked out to the Pacific because the current is taking you back. Um, and so that's the hard part with tsunamis and things like that. Sometimes the force and energy shifts where the currents are going underwater, and so you never really know how things are going to happen. Um,
Yeah. So, our perspective here, because we have clients around the globe here, but we have a pretty decent sized population in Hawaii. So I know I was actually the SOC manager on duty that day. And so I, was in the middle of a conference call and I'm getting pings. I'm like, okay, what's going on? looking at my watch and I was like, oh snap. A tsunami and a warning has been issued. I'm like, okay, question where was my next question.
Yeah.
And I saw Hawaii, and then I went and researched the magnitude, and I saw it was an 8. And then immediately I have the pictures of 2011 Sendai going in my head. And I'm like, okay, that's not good. And then so literally me being the SOC manager, I literally was the call tree process to all our managed service providers in Hawaii. They had first alert because that's where we have a big population of just clients that we either support directly or indirectly. So I was literally calling all our managed service partners, like, hey, we have a problem. This is like, I literally remember calling one person going, this is not a drill. Like, emergency backups needs to be kicked off immediately for all like workstations and server. And again, I repeated, this is not a drill. And then some of them got like, okay, great, we'll kick them off immediately, understood. Others like, wait, what's going on? Like, what happened? And I have to spend another like, minute or two trying to get it. Hey, there's a tsunami inbound into Hawaii. I need you to kick off these backups immediately. Like, this is not a drill. It has to be done now. And it was a fun process, doing that. And then that's just to their tech partners. I didn't even call the account holders or account managers or some of like our reseller partners and everything like that until after I started the backup process, because my first priority was getting the backups initiated, because God knows how much data there is. So we have to exfiltrate it as fast as we can off island, because we just didn't know how big the tsunami was. And it was funny enough was we started calling some of our partners. Some of our partners didn't even hear about the tsunami yet. So we were actually giving first alert, first warning about that. But needless to say, the clients that we know were in a tsunami zone and everything like that, there was no damage. Thanks, grace of God, in that one, thankfully. But I would say, Al, that those first couple of hours out there was definitely hairy, because it was like literally us getting on calls, checking status checks, like, hey, how the backup's going, what's going on, and then starting to alert after zone A, which is what we labeled it, Hawaii, then going to all our zone B priorities. So all our Western California people, and then knowing where everyone was, alerting them and everything like that. So yeah, needless to say, that was a very very fun day.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine. That's kind of, quick reminder of like, your business continuity plans, your emergency action plans. I mean, this is why it's always a good practice to, I always recommend once a quarter do a rehearsal. I know it's not realistic for some businesses, but at minimum once a year, probably twice a year is good practice, especially prior to um seasons when you're going to have weather events, right? And if you can get a rehearsal in once a quarter, I think that's ideal. But always important to kind of rehearse that, because when the alarm goes off and the flag goes up, I mean it's utter chaos. And so the more everyone's familiar with the steps of what needs to happen, the much smoother it goes.
Yeah, I could say, just from a lessons learned perspective, me being kind of having a rough incident plans always in motion. Even I'm thinking about, like, okay, after action, like what needs to be done, and what needs to be learned from. And I could say, one of the big lessons learned, I need to do is be able to distribute some of my workload off people, because I was literally the SOC manager and I was getting hit like with double duty inquiries, like, hey, we're committing this issue, okay, let's troubleshoot this, hey, so and so is not responding, okay, that I was literally kind of double doing between emergency management and SOC operations. It wasn't very fun. And then of course we're always worried about someone taking advantage of the fact that people are gone, people are like abandoning things, or evacuating. Is someone to take advantage of that situation and leverage it as an opportunity to go after whatever's going on. So those, we were worried about that too. So thankfully none of it happened, but still,
Yeah.
it was something that at least I learned that, like, we got to get some of these plans off of my desk, so it's not hitting me when time comes, or whoever's on duty.
Yeah, so I know absolutely. I mean, I think the after action is after you do one of these rehearsals, you really gotta drill down on what you can do better and then update the plan, right? So you don't make the same mistake in your next rehearsal or live action. Um, so what else do we got? So we talked about natural disasters. Do you want to move into the SoFi event, or do you want to move into uh,
Let's,
some cyber stuff?
let's talk Hardfest. That
Okay,
was
all right. Barrier plans.
yeah. So I don't know if anyone has been paying attention, but Hardfest was this, I think this past weekend or something like that. I forgot when it was. Um, but it was at SoFi Stadium, and yeah, let's just say it was interesting. Go take a look on social media, but you see, um, well, I mean, how do we want to label this? Do we want to label it politically correct, politically sensitive, or just politically incorrect?
Well, I mean, it just it is what it is, right? I mean, like LA's under a lot of pressure right now. Ton of ICE activity happening there, right? A lot of demonstrations happening. It's summer season in LA, which means there's a lot of events happening. Um, Recipe for disaster, maybe. But I think ultimately there was clearly a failure here, right?
Yeah, so I think, so if you look at them and watch the various social media videos, you see people actually penetrating the lines of defense, the outer layers as well as the inner layers. So they were literally breaking through the external perimeter jumping fences. I mean, these are temporary fences, and then also breaking through the inner layer of fences and then rushing into Hardfest. Not sure what happened, how it happened, but let's just be honest, it did not look very good. If anything, it looked very concerning, mainly because uh, at least one video I think I shared with you, Al, um, all the tables that are used and then the magnetometers are toppled over on the floor.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the bag check tables were toppled over and everything like that. And, that's concerning, like very concerning. And we're not talking about a 50, 60,000 probably. Well, actually, how big is Hardfest?
That's pretty big. I'm pulling it up right now. I
I don't,
mean, well, we know SoFi holds about 100,000, right? As far as capacity goes.
yeah,
So I mean, we figure most concerts probably fall into that
80,000. So, and
yeah, anywhere between 30 and all that. So let me see here.
yeah, so my thought process is maybe 80,000 to maybe 80 to 100,000, probably something like that. But,
Yeah.
it raises a lot of questions, honestly, like, what prompted this? What started it? What was the incident response plan behind it? There's a lot of these questions that I'm just thinking like, okay, how do we take lessons learned? And by the way, SoFi, as you can see, the security team were completely overwhelmed there. They just couldn't stop them. And I blame them probably because, you know, you're talking about injuries and stuff like that. So, by no means am I blaming them, but, seriously, wow, that was scary to think that, they were just completely overrun in such a short period of time.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't necessarily uncommon at events like this, where a barrier gets knocked over and people are always trying to get into these events. It's not necessarily that in itself isn't. We've seen this over the years, like different concerts over the years. You've had issues like this, but I think the bigger problem is like we know this is going to happen. So how do you mitigate it, right? And there's so much documentation on how to do, flowing of people in and out, how to create a good barrier plan. Um, what security guys need to be able to do. We don't have all the information as to why exactly what happened. I mean, from what we can tell from the video footage and all that, it looks as if, people just kind of like a group of people mobbed through, overwhelmed the security at one entrance, and then a bunch of other people were like, "Oh, cool, let's just go." And it's that kind of mob mentality of people are moving, and I think some people didn't even know why they were moving. They were just like, other people are moving, so I'm going to follow in. It's that kind of chain reaction that happens. And then the more and more people that are there, it's kind of like a tsunami, like we talked about earlier. It just starts gaining energy and going. And at some point, I empathize for the officers there, the police officers and the security guards, because at some point you see the mob coming and you recognize that, like, I'm overwhelmed. There's nothing I can do. The best thing I can do is to just let them keep moving and going through. So the goal of the barrier plan, the goal of all this stuff is to prevent getting to that tipping point, right? It's to channel people, flow people in and out. The flow rate of people in and out of a venue is important. You want, if you're going too slow with the security screenings, um, you let the mob kind of build up, right? And then people start getting frustrated, and then all of a sudden it's hot too. Like, let's keep in mind this last week in Southern California, it has been fairly warm. I think that plays a factor. Weather always plays a factor in these things. Um, and then it becomes chaos. So the other point of this too, though, is that I know one thing that we've had a hard time in general across the board nationwide is staffing events, staffing even security guards. I mean, there's just a shortage of security personnel across the board, from private security guards to law enforcement, to privatized military contractors too. There's shortages. So all the way up and down the board, there's a shortage of security personnel in the space right now. So we could argue that, maybe they just weren't staffed properly, and staffing shortages potentially could have contributed to this. We only saw two security guards in the video that you sent me, and normally a checkpoint like that, it would probably be like five or six for that entry point. Of course, that video is kind of showing us after everything happened, so maybe the security guards were somewhere else. But I'd say that could be a factor here as well, right? Just shortage of personnel. There's only so much two security guards can do when you have, a mob of 100 people trying to rush through the gate.
Yeah. I'm thinking the challenge here is, when this momentum started, like, how did you respond? And, maybe that's a good question, Al. Like, thinking about this even from an after action perspective, how would you hypothetically, respond in that one, central area, especially the fact, someone instigating that chaos, it opens the door for, certain controls that you have, like, making sure people don't bring in weapons is a great example. You could probably smuggle, a 35 millimeter, or caliber, whatever. You could bring a gun at that point right through everything, and in the midst of the chaos, you'd be able to break in and, bypass all the regular controls that you have. So,
Right.
what should be done here, honestly? Cancel the event? Do we, rescreen everybody? Like, what happens? Like, how do you respond to something like this?
This is the challenge. This is the hard part, because fortunately, a lot of this is money driven, right? So, um, going to a promoter or an organizer and saying, "Hey, we had a breach at one of the gates and several hundred people got in and we haven't been able to screen them. We got to cancel the concert." That's usually not a answer they're going to go for, unless there is a clear and present threat, like you saw somebody with a gun, or um, there is a explicit threat of violence that you can confirm. They're typically going to continue on with the event and tell security to keep their eyes peeled during the concert. Um, it's most of the time the money has already been paid when you're at execution day. And so like you've already rented the barriers, you've already leased the equipment, the metal detectors, the wands, the guards are being paid by the hour, so they're already on the clock. It's very difficult, I guess, to put the phrases away. It's very difficult to put the genie back in the bottle at that point, right? Um, and so it's one of those things where I think part of this is there's a big safety issue when it comes to flowing people and how many people can get through. And you have to ensure that you are staffed appropriately to ensure the safety. So I think that's something that has to happen here. But then you have to have multiple layers of mitigation plans. So even if they break through one barrier and they flow into one area, you don't want to give them just free open access based on one barrier. You want to have the people flow in other areas, which still prevents them from getting in somewhere. So if you had to cork it, right, if you had to put a cork back in the bottle, you could stop it, and what we saw with those metal detectors, they're mobile detectors. You could stop everybody, prevent them from getting into through the second layer, and then potentially rescreen, shut down the gate, and then rescreen the people that are in that holding area. It's not always possible because of just, how some venues are designed, and you're working with geographical restrictions, right? Like you you have physical restrictions that prevent you from doing this sometimes, especially smaller venues. SoFi, pretty big venue, so I think they probably could have, mitigated this a little bit. Had multiple flow areas, to kind of prevent people from doing what they did, or at least slow them down enough to where you could have corralled them and then rescreened. But, like we don't know how many people rushed, right? I mean, it could have been a sizable mob. It could have just overwhelmed the system, which does happen. It does happen. Um, but I think you have to consider that. And I don't know if maybe they got to go back to the continuity planning like we had talked about earlier and consider like what happens in the event of X, Y, and Z. Does the team know what they need to do? Unfortunately, what I've noticed with event security where it becomes challenging is it's not uncommon for 20% of the people not to show up the day of the event that are supposed to be doing security. And that is just the reality of event security. You're not getting necessarily uh, dedicated assets that you need for that specific day. It's typically a part-time gig or an on-call gig for a lot of the security guards that show up. Some of them may or may not actually even have a guard card, so know how to like do de-escalation training and all this other stuff. So um, big events like this are challenging from that perspective. I think what I'm kind of more concerned about though is the barrier plan. Um, that is kind of what the personnel piece, the security guard, the security personnel piece is always going to be an X factor that you can't really control. But the barrier plan you can control. You can control like what barriers you need, what kind of capacity, what kind of pressure and obstructability you need for those. So that's a little bit. I'm actually a little bit more concerned about that. Is how did the barriers come down? How were they able to knock the barriers down so easily? Because they have a ton of solutions out there specifically for this use case for events and concerts where you can get those barriers up and they literally are anti-pushover barriers. So they actually lock in tighter when you try to knock them over, and they're like it takes a ton of force to knock them over. So I'm actually a little bit more concerned about that because that is a key uh component of any type of event security plan is the barriers and the flow and being able to prevent them from being knocked over.
I'm actually just kind of interested, why the fences were the height they were, because I noticed a lot of them were just being scaled, not even toppled,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
scaled over, which is equally concerning because then they're just jumping and then, what happens then kind of deal.
Well, that's why you want to look at anti-climb solutions. They have a coating, a polymer coating on them which makes it very difficult to get traction. You end up just kind of slipping off. Obviously they're more expensive, right? And there is a aspect to that. And then there's also the height that you mentioned. I mean, those just look like very small standard barricades to kind of just keep people in place, but they didn't look like they were weighted down. They didn't look like they were secured in the ground in any way. Very easy to knock over and push over. And kind of given what's been happening in LA the last, few weeks with demonstrations and all this other stuff, I think I would have approached that differently, just me personally.
Yeah, they look like only what center 6 or 7 foot fences.
Yeah. Yeah.
They didn't look that tall based on that. And then granted, human beings were this as a species, we're kind of getting taller. Though Al and I will forever be vertically challenged. Uh, but yeah, it just made me wonder, like, there's just so much that makes me kind of wonder, okay, what led up to this where they could storm. And now then once you get into certain areas, you blend in. It's like then you're stuck inside that group and everything like that, then you're gone. But I'm also mindful of the thought process of the copycatting now. Like, can you rush a Rams game going forward or a Chargers game? And
Right. Yeah. I mean, it raises questions about all the events that are supposed to happen at SoFi. Um,
don't get me
yeah.
wrong, I think the SoFi team is fantastic. I've met
Yeah. I mean, very professional team. And I don't think this one incident really reflects their professionalism. I think that there were probably other failures here. But failures nonetheless, right, that have to be addressed.
yeah, yeah. So I think there's questions, and I think there's opportunities. I think you just have to be mindful of that. And I think I'm not picking on SoFi by any means. This if you can apply this to any other high profile event, any other music festival, any other sporting event, any other concert, K-pop concert, whatever. It can apply to any one of them, and you would still have these different various challenges to various degrees. And not going to say I could probably do, infinitely better. I firmly don't. Sorry, I firmly do believe you shouldn't be throwing rocks at glass houses, especially if it's yours.
Oh, no, absolutely. I mean, and we have to say it. I mean, it. This is just a very like a summer concert where there's likely a lot of substances being used by the crowd. It's a challenge. It's a very difficult challenge to keep people from acting unruly, right? I mean, and I've got a video here. I'll share the screen here real quick just to kind of give everyone some perspective. I mean, we're not by any means we're not knocking on the SoFi team at all. We know those guys. They definitely do great work, but I mean it's a challenge. Let's see if you can.
Don't forget to share
Oh,
screen.
sorry. There we go. Sorry. There we go. We're sharing it now.
Still
Okay.
loading.
All right. Well, all right.
Loading.
That was a fail. Loading. All right.
I think you exit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you guys see it? Yeah. So you guys can see, um, barriers were knocked down, and I don't know if maybe one of them was damaged or somebody came in there, but we saw it kind of at that last clip there. I'll play it one more time. Um, you know,
It looks
it,
like they were using those red barricades to
yeah, exactly. They were using the vehicle bollards there to scale to get over. So I think that would be like a feedback point is and maybe again there's a lot of there are a lot of regulations when it comes to your barrier plan when you're in different cities, right? Like there's things you can do, certain things you can't do based on city ordinances and things like that. But I think that's a feedback point, right? I mean, you need to have some type of offset, or you need to have some type of um, way of preventing that from happening, right? I mean, just looking at the video, I mean, they've got the sniper. It's called sniper screen, the canvas over the chain link fence, which is good. It looks like the barriers are interconnected with metal studs to keep them in place, but it also looks like one of them failed, and that was, again, that one failure of that link in the chain. Um, People found a way to get in and push in, and it's unfortunate, and it's tough. It's a challenge. Like, the SoFi team overall, I mean, there were no incidences from what I understand, no big critical incidents. So this is going to be kind of probably a point of focus for them on how to prevent this in the future. But overall, they did a great job outside of this. But it's hard to control thousands of people, especially when it's an event, high profile event that people want to be in.
And like I said, not the Monday night quarterback, but I think it's a good opportunity to understand. Okay, there's opportunities for improvement, just like from doing with the tsunami that we had. Learn from this process, learn from what went right and what went wrong.
Right.
Uh, and I'm thinking the multitudes of challenges and everything like that. If you get overwhelmed, like how do you respond? And to your point, Al, there's a business decision that they have to make too as well. Like I think something that I hope a lot of people are doing is understanding the business decision. At what threshold or level do you flush or cancel an event or postpone or whatever? I think there's need to be a threshold usually defined in an interest of safety. And I'm reminded of was it a K-pop concert. They were in mid, like almost like three-quarters of the way, or 7/8 of the way. They were like one of the final couple songs, and fans managed to break through the barricades, and then out of those abundance of security, they just canceled the rest of the conference as a conference or the show. They just pulled them off the when the people ran on stage, told them, and then they heard and they ran off stage. So I think given everything that has happened and transpired, it's it may be worthwhile sometimes to cancel an event. And I hate to say that, but why reward rule breakers at this point? Like,
Right.
let the fans self police and hold account.
Right. And I mean, we did see what happened. I think it was Astroworld 20, it might have been 2020, when several of the fans ended up basically getting crushed and stomped, um, because the barrier plan wasn't, it just was not conducive. I don't know who signed off on that one, but I mean, it was I think a 3-day concert, and it ended day one because of all the situations. So, I mean, there are real, not only the life safety issue, but then there's financial impacts too, right?
Yeah.
Cancel a concert like that because something like the barrier plan wasn't well designed. There was no escape for people when something happened. So, um, there are a lot of implications here that can happen. And so I think it's important to really focus on that and the mitigation factors and how you're gonna prevent that from happening. Because unfortunately, you know, had this been a life safety event, it would have caused a lot more problems, right? We would be having a different conversation right now. And so, you know, it's, you know, it's a little crazy. I mean, I'm thankful. I'm thankful that nobody got, um, seriously injured or killed. But, I mean, I got the numbers here. It looks like almost 160,000 fans were around the area. I don't know how many were in the stadium, but I mean, it's a lot of people to control.
That makes me wonder the undersold tickets, and that which contributed to the problem too.
Yeah.
So, okay. Where do we want to go next here? Because I think
We're right up on our noon time hack here. You want to do our little takeaways and then call it.
so our closing statements for
Yeah.
the so I think the biggest one here is, plans are useless, but planning is essential, as Dwight Eisenhower says.
Good way to put it.
I think just events from just even last week, from what we experienced here at our workplace, clearly shows that even the most well prepared plans can fall through. And I will say there were moments that I was like, oh my goodness, like how do we get out of this mess? And like I hope nothing bad happens. Hope people are okay. Yeah, so it proved interesting.
Yeah, I'd probably echo those comments. Just no plan ever survives first contact, but a bad plan is better than no plan. And a bad plan executed quickly and with a lot of action can be a turn into a good plan. But no plan at all is a sure way to have failure. What I think it was it piss poor planning leads to piss poor performance. There's that's the was it six P's or something like that. And then there's if you don't have if you fail to plan to fail, right? There's that other one. So I echo basically all those little things there. I mean, have a plan in place, even if it's not a great one. Having one in place is way better than not having anything at all.
Yeah, amen to that. Amen to that. All right, folks. We're gonna make this a short episode because both Al and I are flying today. He flies first. I fly later. But we'll see you in Dallas, Austin, and Vegas. So come by and say hi.
Definitely.
To all of our 500 million internet fans out there. Anyways, take care, guys. Be safe and enjoy your respective conferences.